They told you it was historic. They told you it was packed. But look at the live shot. Because the cameras don't lie, even when the president does. Power outages, a broken Ferris wheel, a canceled performance, and a crowd you could count in seconds. While Americans struggle to pay their bills, he's busy building monuments to himself. Tonight, we show you what really happened and what was said behind closed doors. This is the real picture, and it starts now.
Sometimes the pictures really don't tell the full story, because if you look behind us, you see, okay, there are a couple of hundred people back there, but the truth is, when you make your way over here and you're in a wash of people.
There are thousands of people here, and I'll tell you what, that's with rain, with everything else going on, the fact that it is heightened security just because of the world right now. It's really an awesome crowd, and it's people that want to be here.
Don't believe your eyes. Don't believe your ears. I put on my glasses to get a closer look. The live shot literally behind all those people saying all those things tells a totally different story from the things coming out of their mouths. Hi again, everyone. It's 5 o'clock in the East. Donald Trump's long-awaited Freedom 250 Great American State Fair went off with a whimper this weekend, with what looked like dozens of people showing up for the event, which was plagued with problems, power outages, a shutdown Ferris wheel, extreme weather, and the cancellation of a performance by one of the only artists who stood by Donald Trump, other than Kash Patel's girlfriend, and that was part of Vanilla Ice. Needless to say, the less than stellar reviews of the fair and the viral posts about his itty-bitty little crowds have gotten under Donald Trump's skin in a big way. Donald Trump posted this response on Truth Social, quote, "Do you think people appreciate what a fantastic job we did in building and operating the Great American State Fair at the National Mall packed with happy people?" Oh my God, I can't believe I'm reading this. And everybody loving it. The president went on, "Ask yourself the simple question." The president of the United States switched to all caps. Quote, "Do you think that Obama or Sleepy Joe Biden could have done it?" The answer is, in Trump's post, no. The answer was like Obama did it last week at the opening of the Obama Center. But I guess in this case, Trump has a point. Obama has never in his life, like if Obama's motorcades draw bigger crowds for OTRs, trips that aren't even announced. But it was all part of a weekend that did little to turn around Donald Trump's political fortunes and dispel the belief among Americans that Trump is obsessed on himself and his vanity projects, more so than he is on the concerns of the American people or his own coalition, who are screaming at the top of their lungs about the economy and about a very unpopular war in Iran. As the deal to end that war with Iran, one of the main drivers of Trump's cost of living crisis all but collapsed, Trump appeared to be more focused on the national monuments / golf course tour. There's now a golf course on the agenda, and his apparent plan to plant 47 trees in his own honor, like in honor of him, according to new reporting in the Washington Post. And if you thought it couldn't get any worse, Vice President J.D. Vance bailed. He wasn't around to pick up any of the slack or absorb any of the embarrassment, saying, "Oh, they rejected me, not you, Donald." He was promoting his book. He was on a book tour. This is all real. Donald Trump and his administration embarrassing themselves and our country by doubling and tripling down on self-aggrandizement as Americans can't afford to pay their bills and fill up their tanks with gas. It's where we start the hour with some of our most favorite reporters and friends. Scott MacFarlane's here. He's the chief Washington correspondent for Midas Touch. Also joining us, New York Times investigative reporter David Fahrenthold is back with us. And Puck News senior political columnist and national affairs analyst John Heilemann is here. Heilemann, I'll start with you for some framing on this. Like, it doesn't read as real. I read this and I like, is this AI? Is this really what they're doing? And I thought about the book that I know you and I have been through, the Regime Change Reporting, where one of the closest people to Donald Trump is this woman, Natalie Harp, who helps create this altered reality for Donald Trump. But what is the issue here, where like he actually thinks that it's his job to make up lies about the reflecting pool, put on at taxpayer expense sparsely attended celebrations that are so politically poisoned, no normal people want to be a part of them, and build things in his own honor when he couldn't even line a frickin' pond?
You always give me the good questions, Nicole, where it involves like some combination of speculation, psychoanalysis, and a tiny little bit of political analysis. I think Natalie Harp
that's perfect for you.
Is the I totally agree. This is why I come on the show, because it's like, right, that's my strike zone right there. It's a very small strike zone, but that's my strike zone. I keep thinking about the fact that, you made this point about how Obama did exactly, have brought out, U2 and Bruce Springsteen and all these people to play, Stevie Wonder to play in Chicago last week. And you can't really blame Trump for not knowing about that, right? I mean, you can't blame him. I don't think he knows about it. Don't you think that's the deal? It's like,
that's such a good point.
Is not.
She turned off all the TVs. Don't unplug the cable.
They're not on the networks he watches. Yeah. He's watching other networks. And Natalie Hart, the human fax machine, the human printer, is not printing out stories to please the boss about, hey, look at Barack Obama's lineup, right? I think I think the bubble of delusion. I mean, look, you and I both think that Trump's mental acuity is declining pretty precipitously. We also think he has various kind of psychic things that I'm not qualified to diagnose seriously, but has various kinds of syndromes and pathologies that in combination with the information bubble that a lot of presidents do get into, right, where they lose touch with what's really going on out there. And I think that combination is part of what explains the other things you're talking about that are more serious things, right? Because the reality is that we did on this show a few weeks ago when Trump had the drawings of the Golden Ballroom, right, that was replacing the East Wing. And the most amazing thing about those drawings was not the drawings, was that he had them on his lap and he had invited reporters in
holding them
to
up,
boast about them, as if he didn't understand that it was politically toxic. And the Donald Trump of 2015, 2016, that Donald Trump wouldn't have been like that, right? I mean, Donald Trump knew his base, knew what working class voters, he had a fingertip feel for what voters wanted. That's why he won in 2016. And he still even had it to some extent in 2024. Again, you can dislike him all you want. There's plenty of room for that. But he had a fingertip feel for what millions of Americans wanted. I think the fact that he has lost that is illustrated in 100 different examples. This last weekend was one of them. The Golden Ballroom boasting about these pictures as if like somehow this was the thing that was going to heal him politically is another sign that, again, he's in a profound bubble, somewhat self-created, somewhat I think the product of his own mind, somewhat the product of the circumstances in which the velvet prison that he's built around himself, and people like Natalie Harp, who knows if she actually ever gave him a representative bunch of what the news coverage was, she would be fired if not imprisoned, right? And whatever kinds of cognitive decline he's suffering is the kind of magic admixture that has led to this period that, and I got to tell you, you got to stop saying this thing about how you check to see if it's AI. The rule now, Nicole, like with Jonathan Swan and Maggie Haberman, who said, when the White House says something, our presumption is they're lying until proven otherwise. I think you have to presume that the most ridiculous things that you see, that those things are real until they're proven to be AI, as opposed to the other way around. Because that is just what we're seeing over and over again. I mean, the more ludicrous it is, the more likely it's true.
Yeah, I mean, and look, David, I mean, the Times had some phenomenal reporting. We had Luke Broadwater on at the end of the week on Friday. His byline was one of the bylines on it. I mean, we don't even know how much redecorating of the White House and the monuments and the mall that's planned. But I don't say it facetiously. Like, he could not adequately source a bid to effectively and successfully line the reflecting pool. And we think he's going to build an arch through which cars will drive. I mean, that's insane. That is absolute insanity. And I wonder if we are really so devoid of checks and balances on the public safety side that he's just going to bulldoze all of D.C.
Well, there's two interesting things at work here. One is that, every president in their second term gets frustrated with their inability to change things domestically. They move to foreign policy where they have more a free hand. Trump did that, and it worked in Venezuela. It didn't work in Iran. Now he's taken another step inward, which is he's going to try to change the things within like 3 miles of his house, where he does have more power and he has a very pliant Interior Department, that there are less checks and balances to stop him from doing things on the mall. But there's something really interesting at work here, which is that the things that Trump wants done the most are often, in this case, the things that are done the least well. And the reflecting pool is a great example of that. The Great American State Fair, where I just came back from, is another example of that, because they get handed out as no-bid contracts, or they get given to allies or toadies or yes men, and they just do it fast and don't ask any questions, don't do any of their own independent thinking. They just want to rush to please Trump and do exactly what he said. And it comes back to bite him. It came back to bite him with the reflecting pool. It's now coming back to bite him at the Great American State Fair, that nobody underneath him feels like it's to their advantage to take 2 seconds to think about what he said, to push back, to offer alternatives, to even seek competing bids. They just want to go as fast as they can. And you see how quickly it turns into them stepping on a rake.
I mean, Scott MacFarlane, there is a really sort of macabre apples to apples that you can draw. I remember during COVID, he wanted to have a rally. I think it was in Tulsa, and there were COVID restrictions in place. He wanted them all overridden. His staff was forced to pack an indoor arena. Allies became extremely ill after that event. But because he wanted the room packed, and because he had a sense that looking like his events were sparsely attended, even in the throes of the deadly COVID pandemic, the arena was packed. He has the same insatiable appetite to be feted, and there was nobody there. I mean, what does this say about the people around him and their impotence?
It was indeed Oklahoma in 2020 where that happened, and his fixation on crowd size has been one consistent portion of the Trump presidency, 1.0 and 2.0. And I feel like all of this was doomed to fail at the Great American State Fair the second Milli Vanilli canceled. Only bad things happen when Milli Vanilli cancels on you. It is going to be a chapter of the story of Trump that's titled Milli Vanilli canceled on Trump, but he persevered.
Yes.
Here's the thing, Nicole. I've got an official document here. I've got a Post-it note that lists all the important dates coming up soon on Trump vanity projects. It's put up or shut up time. July 8th, he's going to be in court, or his Department of Justice will be in court on the slush fund. July 9th, the Department of Justice, Nicole, on July 9th has to actually put on paper what it says people did at the reflecting pool. That's the deadline to charge people either with minor water touching or some type of felonious box cutter assault. Then mid-July, he's got to answer for the TARP on the Kennedy Center. The judge wants to know why the TARP is still up there when the TARP's coming down. There's an Epstein file deadline this week. Todd Blanche is testifying. All this stuff is going to come back up again and again. It's Vanity Project month in July, with or without Milli Vanilli.
And so let's step back for a second, because what we just walked through isn't really a story about a state fair. It's a story about distance. The growing distance between the version of America being broadcast from the National Mall and the version Americans are actually living in. Let's recap quickly. This weekend's Great American State Fair was supposed to be a showcase. Instead, it delivered power outages, a shutdown Ferris wheel, extreme weather, and a high-profile cancellation. Attendance, by most independent accounts, was sparse. And rather than acknowledge that, the president went to social media to insist, in his words, in all caps, that the event was packed, beloved, and unmatched by any predecessor. Meanwhile, the actual crisis driving voter anger, the cost of living, a stalled Iran deal, a war with no resolution in sight, barely got a mention. Here's the part that should give all of us pause. Our panel made an important observation. The things this administration seems to want, done the fastest, with no pushback and no competing bids, are consistently the things done the worst. The reflecting pool, the fairgrounds, projects rushed through by people more interested in pleasing the boss than getting it right. That's not just a communications problem. That's a governance problem. When an entire structure around a leader is built to confirm what he wants to hear rather than what's actually true, the gap between perception and reality doesn't just widen, it becomes dangerous. And emotionally, that's the part that lingers. There's something almost unsettling about watching a sitting president hold up architectural renderings like trophies, declare a half-empty fairground a historic success, and seem genuinely unaware that millions of Americans are watching their grocery bills climb while he tours golf courses bearing his own name. It doesn't read as strength. It reads as a man increasingly insulated from the country he's supposed to serve, surrounded by people whose job, by design or by fear, is to tell him only what he wants to hear. So here are the questions worth sitting with tonight. First, when the people closest to power are rewarded for flattery instead of honesty, who actually pays the price for that distortion? And second, at what point does the spectacle stop being a distraction from the real crises and start becoming the story itself? Because make no mistake, the real deadlines are coming. Court dates on the slush fund, a reckoning over the reflecting pool, questions about the Kennedy Center, the Epstein files. These aren't manufactured headlines, they're real accountability moments, arriving whether the crowds show up or not. At the end of the day, leadership isn't measured by how full a tent looks in a photo, or how loudly a claim is shouted in capital letters. It's measured by whether the people in charge are actually solving the problems that keep regular Americans up at night. Right now, the evidence suggests otherwise. We'll keep watching, we'll keep asking the hard questions, and we'll keep bringing you the story behind the story, not the one written for applause, but the one that's actually true. If you found this report insightful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more real, fact-based news commentary.